It's the one thing that could bring me joy this football season. I'm glad that's on the beginning of this. All right, we can roll. All right, Double Fries, No Slaw, the morning show, Tuesday morning, the 15th. It feels like, I know we did this last week, and we do this every Tuesday morning, so it's really not that different. But it just feels like a lot has happened. Florida State didn't play. That usually breaks up the week a little bit. Obviously, the storm. Thinking about you if you're impacted in any way through that. We were fortunate where I live. A lot of people dealt with a lot of crap, and so none of what we'll talk about today. Sorry for coughing on the mic. Is as important as people's safety and life and homes and stuff like that. But if you hopefully you made it through that okay if you're here in the Florida area. Some people still without power. I know that sucks. I did see last night, this has nothing to do with football, but I did see last night that power, I don't know what the exact number is, but the storm made landfall 5 days. As of last night, the storm had made landfall like 5 days, like to the moment, and more power had been restored in 5 days than had ever been done on record before with like any storm, like in Florida. I want to say maybe 3 million people with power back was the number I saw. I'll look it up so that I'm not just BSing on that. But I think that's cool. Like, and if you still have power and you're watching this, that, maybe doesn't make you feel too much better. But yeah, I mean, shout out the linemen and stuff that are working through that stuff. We got it back on Friday afternoon, which was good. We didn't have any damage, so thank the Lord for that. And if you were impacted anyway, or if you're still impacted by Helene or Milton or whatever, we're certainly thinking about you. And it looks like there's another one out there in the ocean, not on the Gulf side. We need the break, but some spaghetti models kind of showing one out in the ocean that looks like it may go hit Jamaica or Haiti or something down there. So maybe give Florida a break, but we'll see what ends up happening with that one. Invest 94. I'm following all these weather pages now. This is not going to turn into a weather podcast. I'll shut up about that in a minute, but certainly thinking about you if you were impacted in any way by the storm. Florida State and Duke this week, Friday night game. I don't know how I feel about this. Mostly good, though. I would like to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments, or if you call it, you can call in. There is a link in the description that you can call in. You can click that and call in. It does work. I will tell you, it works a little bit better on a computer than on a phone. If you do call in on a phone, put your phone on Do Not Disturb when you click the link. That will help you from getting kicked out. Obviously, the better your service is, the better it's going to come in, because it's not just a phone call. It is using data. So anyway, if you have a computer, that's ideal. If you don't, it's not a huge deal. The phone will work. But maybe turn your camera off if you call it on the phone, because you're not going to be on camera anyway. That'll help the bandwidth and stuff. So I like the Friday night thing. I do. Most of the way, the way this season is gone, I just like getting it over with, right? You win, you go into Saturday, you feel good about it. I'm not going to be miserable the rest of the year. I already am miserable, so I'll say that. But I'm not going to be miserable the rest of the year. So I like the Friday night thing just because you lose, you're upset, you're frustrated that it's the first loss ever to Duke. You move on, right? Saturday morning gets here. I can decompress from like 11 p.m. on Friday night to noon on Saturday, and then I can just enjoy football, right? And then you win, you kind of feel good the rest of the day on Saturday because you have a win in your back pocket. So I love the Friday night thing. Don't get me wrong. I hate the ACC, hate playing on a Friday night in general, but this year I think it actually works out pretty well. Appreciate Decadent, a coffee and dessert bar, for their support. You can visit. They've got 3 locations right now that are open and available. Modesto, California. They've got one up in Fulton, Maryland, and then, of course, they're in Warner Robins, Georgia. If you're anywhere close to that one, I feel like most of you would probably be closer to Georgia than Maryland or California. But if we have any early morning 5:50 a.m. listeners in California, go get you some coffee. But yeah, appreciate them for their support and continued partnership. They work with, or are working with, and have meetings with different Florida State entities, and appreciate that for sure. They give back to a bunch of different programs that mean a lot, different, whether it's wounded vets or whatever. Patrick, their CEO, is a veteran, and so we appreciate them for all that they do, not only for our channel and our show, but just in the greater community, making a big impact in a lot of other places too. Duke this week. All right, so I do want to talk about the depth chart, and that is important. Harlan, I don't know if you can find a tweet with the depth chart and throw it to me real quick. I just kind of have it lost, but if you could just text me that'd be great. Or if you want to throw it up on, you can even throw it up on this main screen and just put it on top of my face. It's fine. But depth chart updates I thought were somewhat encouraging. We talked about this a lot, and honestly just guessed right. I'm not going to pat myself on the back for this because I guessed wrong a lot about this team. But I was very hopeful. So, but we did guess right on this. Like, nobody told me this is what was going to happen. And some of it may be due to injury. But I will say, shout out Mike Norvell for doing this. Maybe more of its necessity, but not all the way. Like, I think at safety, you're doing it for other reasons. Tight end, you're doing it for other reasons. Wide receiver, you're doing it because it's the right thing to do. But, yeah, I mean, shout out Norvell for going youth. I mean, I think, the fans probably would have liked to see it earlier, but there was no reason to, keep beating dead horses. And I can even actually move over a little bit, Harlan, if you want. Yeah, there you go. There was no reason to kind of keep beating the dead horse of playing guys that aren't really going to make an impact long-term for you. Right. So getting to a youth movement, getting to different guys in there and playing is probably pretty beneficial for you long-term. Obviously, DJ not even on the depth chart. I know there was some different reporting out that maybe he would come back later. I've been told that it's pretty much done. I think people will riot if Mike puts DJ back even on the depth chart. That's no shot at DJ. I just think it's time to close that chapter. And then, Davis and Toafili starting. I don't think anybody's surprised by that. Roydell obviously out. Wide receiver looks a lot better to me, having the young guys. Your slot position. Okay, the Jaylen Brown thing was weird. I don't know why he didn't play against Clemson. I don't think it makes a big difference, but people speculate about him being injured. I don't think that was the case. I don't know if he was on some kind of punishment or not. I don't know if that's something that was dug on or if anybody asked about that in a press conference. Press conferences are a little bit depressing to me now, so I've kind of stopped watching them. But glad to see Hakeem as the starter. I still think Ja'Kai, even as a redshirt senior, that is going to be gone after the next 6 games. I still think he deserves playing time and, to get in pretty often. I think that, lower down on the depth chart, the older guys, thank you for your service, and it's probably time to move on. And then offensive line. Listen, if we're going to see guys just absolutely get dominated on the offensive line, I'd rather it be the young guys. I'd rather get them reps, early, Otto being in there at guard. I think that's probably good for you, right? Ferguson, just not what you thought you were getting. I did like Richie Leonard a lot. I didn't, he wasn't spectacular by any means, but he was probably your best offensive lineman. I think, I'm a little interested to see if Murray Smith can bounce back. Had a really bad game snapping the ball against Clemson in really big moments that you needed him to not be terrible. He was pretty terrible. Brock driving your team and third manageable, and you snap the ball way over his head, or thank God that Brock had he's got the moxie to catch a snap that's way off to his left and be able to catch that. But I don't know. Jacob Rizzi's parents came by or mom, I think, came by the tailgate for Clemson, and she was really nice. And they had some optimism about him maybe playing. And I don't know. I think I don't know how ready he is or ready he isn't, but I think you almost could even just kind of give him a look if Smith starts to struggle again. Rizzi being a senior, I don't necessarily know if, you're going to retain, I don't know if he's got a year you could get back. I mean, I think he's only played in 1 game, right? So maybe you could if you don't play him 4, but I don't know. Hopefully that the snapping is just better. Smith's not been amazing blocking, but you just got to get Brock the ball. I mean, sheesh, what do you expect from the freshman if you can't even get him the ball? But I do think it's encouraging to see the younger guys on here. The problem is you're not getting anything out of your older guys. You've got 3 redshirt seniors, Byers, Smith, and Washington. And I just don't think they've been very good this year. And I don't know what the issue is, because we like to rag on development on the offensive line. The whole thing won't be a soapbox, but we like to rag on development on the offensive line. But those 3 were pretty good last year. Byers, not great in pass pro, pretty good run blocker. Or maybe backward, whatever. Good in one phase, not in the other. Washington was like all ACC level last year, all preseason all ACC this year. And then Smith was really, really good for you. So like, I don't, to me, that's not development. Like, I don't know if it's just a lack of confidence. I don't know what it is, but those three guys, like I don't see, you're not good your redshirt junior year and then just all of a sudden terrible your redshirt senior year and me blame that on development. Like, what the heck happened to those guys? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So anyway, hopefully those guys can be better in the second half of the year. I think you're playing some defensive lines that you can certainly have some success against, and Duke and Carolina, Charleston Southern, Florida even. Miami is going to be tough. Notre Dame's going to be tough, but hopefully those guys can be better. I do think it's encouraging to have the young guys in. I think that's a really good sign by Norvell, especially on the offensive side, on the line. Defensively, throwing Kirkland in there at safety. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Conrad Hussey's been very good. Like, I think he showed so much promise last year. You obviously think about the big hit against Virginia Tech, just lighting the guy up. I don't know what has happened to him. I don't think Shaheem's been very good, if we're just being very honest. And hopefully that can be something that improves. I think the corners have been fine. I like the young guys at corner, Quindarius Jones, but hopefully KJ Kirkland playing back there can give you a little something different. I like the Kevin Knowles, Edwin Joseph. Like, Edwin Joseph kind of listed as a co-starter. Omar Graham worries me, although he was a little bit better last week against Clemson. It's hard for me to complain too much. I thought he played fairly well against Clemson with the injury to Lundy. I still think Riley, Nicholson, Cryer probably better, but for whatever reason, we're not going away from Omar Graham, and hopefully he'll shut me up and play really well. And then defensive line, I mean, pretty standard. Nothing's really changed too much there. I do think that Marvin Jones Jr. on passing downs is fine, and then hopefully you play Lelohay a little bit more when you think Duke may run. So anyway, I think the depth chart is encouraging, and I hope they continue to go to more young guys. I think that having 2 weeks to prepare and get them ready, the younger guys, for more action probably makes a ton of sense. And hopefully they can, it's Duke, right? Like, I don't know how much of a breakdown you have to do for Duke, but sheesh, if you can't go up there and win, then I don't know. As bad as this year has been, and as fake good as Duke is, Duke 5-1 and Florida State 1-5 is something I didn't think I'd see in my wildest dreams. I still think you should go up there and win, even as a 3.5 point underdog. So, all right, Tony's in. Tony, you want to come on and chat a little bit? We'll chat some, and then we'll get rolling here.
Hey, what's up, man? How's it going?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Oh, awesome. I'll be heading over to Duke Friday night for that game. I live up here in DC, and man, I think a lot of I look at the defense. I wanted to focus a little bit on the defense because I was watching a football game this last Saturday, and I forgot who it was. And man, for the first time, it was like 4th and 5, and the team just needed that first down, and it was almost the end of the game. And the defensive coordinator, to stop them, man, he crowded that box like Mickey Andrews used to do back in the day. And he put the guys on the outside man to man, and he shut them down. He had no respect for that offense. And I was like, man, I haven't seen a crowded box like that in years,
Yeah.
I mean, Mickey used to do that, and it reminded me of that. And we don't do that. We prevent. Everything's preventative. You put the guys 20 yards back or 10 yards back, and let's see if we can just keep them in front of us. So I think a lot of that is, a lot of our issue too is a little bit of the scheme. I mean, we got all this talent, you know. I mean, that we do have guys that are flying around, but they just don't seem to be going to the right spots, in
Yeah.
some cases. So
Yeah, it's like we're not putting him in position to succeed. Like, there's a lot of talent on this defense, and like, is Marvin Jones Jr. as good as we thought he'd be? No, he's not. Right? Is Daryl Jackson maybe as good as we thought he'd be? No, he might not be. Right? Linebackers are a struggle, but I mean, there's still, and Clemson's probably not a good comparison, right? Because they do have more talent than you, and so that's fine. Like, kind of take that one out of your mind. But you have so much more talent than everyone else you've played. But it's not just talent, right? Like, obviously, like, the player execution matters too. But like, I don't think they're being put in a good position to succeed. And that's exactly what you're saying, right? Like they're just not, on fourth and short or on third and short. And that's just what Fuller wants to do, right? Like Fuller wants to play bend, don't break. They're going to get a lot of yards. They're going to convert a lot of third downs because we don't challenge people and we don't have that nasty Mickey Andrews. Shoot, we don't even have that nasty Jeremy Pruitt defense, right? Like
Yeah.
we play, and that's his philosophy, right? To be very fair, it kind of worked against Clemson. Like Clemson had 500 yards and you made them settle for 5 field goals, right? Without a busted coverage or two, maybe they only score 22 points, right? And you feel even better about it. I don't know. But he's very okay with saying like, yeah, you're going to drive the length of the field on us and then we're going to bow up in the red zone. And they do an okay job of that, right? Like they actually do like kind of execute what he's wanting there, I guess. And they play that bend don't break like really well-ish, right? Like it's frustrating to watch. But I mean, for an offense that's limited, by doing that, you're always going to lose the time of possession battle, right? Like you're always going to have your defense on the field more often than your offense. And you're not putting them, it's just not complimentary football at all, in my opinion, right? Like I'm not going to pretend to be, the greatest film analyst of all time. Like I don't do any of that crap. But like just to me, the common sense approach is kind of like, well, your defense is going to be on the field for a crap ton of time. You're going to give up a ton of third downs, which is going to give the offense confidence. And then at the end of the day, a struggling offense that's only averaging freaking 13, 14 points a game, you're just giving them less possessions by giving them less time. And so I don't know. Like, I'm not saying that I want to get bombed deep and have a bunch of guys running past us at all times of the night because we play up too close too often. But it does. I agree. Like, it just feels like they're not necessarily put in a position to potentially succeed because they just play so soft. Why are you off? Why are you on 3rd and 6? Why are you off like by 10 yards, right? Like on 3rd and 3, why are you not pressing there? And that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The defensive line last year was good enough to get away with it, right? You didn't have to stack the box with Verse and Fisk and Fabo and Peyton on the other side. Like you could get away with that, but like they're not. And the linebackers with Deloach and Bethune filling the right holes and being athletic. The personnel this year does not match that. And so that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Again, I'm not getting paid over $1 million to coach defense, so maybe I'm an idiot. I don't know. But no. I think you're spot on, man.
Yeah, it's and not all the time. You don't have to crowd the box all the time. I know, Chuck Amato and these, Mickey Andrews and these guys, that they love doing that because you had linebackers. The linebackers drove that whole defense back in the day. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're talking the Marvin Jones, the Derek Brookses, and
Buster,
those guys were just ridiculous, And then you had these two corners always that were just Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
The Terrell Buckleys and the Deons, and they were shutdown guys. The the Codys, and all these guys. So
Carter and all of them, in the second.
Carter, man. I mean that's and it was an easy defense for him to just call. But when I did see that one game, and I can't remember the teams, and it was they were playing spread out defenses and putting the nickels in the right spots and all that. But when they said no, crowd the box, dude, there was a perfect line. Everybody was on that line.
Yeah.
And I said, I haven't seen that in years. And so, but man, to get to the offense, I think, man, Brock has sparked it. We've all talked about it. We've worn that out. I like Brock. I like his spark. He brings let's go guys to the field. Yes, we need to start catching the ball again. There are just a couple of little drops that are just, come on, guys, and the offensive line. I like the fact, like you said earlier, let's get some of these new guys in there. I want to play this youth. They're only going to get better and stronger. And, we need to FSU needs to get back to developing again, instead of letting the fans help you develop, we're screaming, hey, go put this guy in. Oh, okay. Let me do that, So.
And you mentioned it too, like the root cause, like the root issue, is it all still comes down to players. Like why was Mickey able to why was it, and I'm not taking anything away from like the GOAT, right? But like, why was it easy for Mickey to coach defense? Why was it easy for Fuller to coach defense last year? Why was it easy for Stoops and Pruitt and I mean even Kelly like at certain times? Why was it easy for them to coach defense? Because they just had NFL players all over the field. And like, how many NFL players are on this defense right now? Like, yeah, there's two on the defensive line. Like, I think Pat and
And
Farmer,
Farmer.
yeah,
Yeah.
go to the league in the NFL. I think Thomas probably does. I mean, Shaheem is probably costing himself some money, but like with a good year, like he could. Yeah, I think he should come back next year if he's going to play hard and have his head on straight. But yeah, there's a few, but there's not a lot, and that's the problem. Is like, yeah, defense is easy to call when you just have better players than. But they're almost calling defense like they were last year, and they don't really know how to adjust to lacking personnel. And so it all comes down to players. Like, yeah, the defense was built around like, I mean, even again under the Jimbo years, like you could run anything you wanted with Telvin Smith in the middle. Like it just like how smart do you have to be when Mario Edwards and Telvin Smith and Jalen Ramsey and
Yeah.
Lamarcus Joyner are on your defense? How good of a defensive coordinator do you really have to be? And I'm not taking anything away from Pruitt. I think he was good, but like how good do you really have to be?
I
Like
mean,
to
and,
coach
and then you had Timmy Jernigan. I mean,
yeah,
you had these animals, man. I mean, Goldman. I mean, you had all these guys.
yeah,
I
Terrence
mean,
Brooks,
it's
Terrence Smith. It was ridiculous.
godly. Yeah, yeah. That whole team was just it's just, but I think a lot of it too has changed because you brought in this whole money factor. This bank. You're seeing these top schools. Ditch out mega money too, and yeah, it's hurting us that we're not winning, but you're seeing that we're losing recruits. But this whole money thing has changed a lot. You've got to be a really good coordinator to really turn this stuff around. You've got to throw away your old book and say, hey man, how can we get these guys in a position to shine? It's not just like you said, let's just bend a lot and not break. Challenge these guys. That's what Bobby Bowden used to do. I challenge you to go out there in the second half, and I challenge you to stop these guys. This is your house. So I don't know. I mean,
I and I think and you're right too. Like the best coaches, and obviously this is I'm gonna say a name that's like ridiculously good, but like this like Saban didn't have the same type of quarterback or the same type of defense every single like he was like what makes great coaches great is they're able to adjust or they get like the players in that fit their system and that's what makes them really good. Like Mark Stoops almost never has like more talent than the team he's lining up against, right? Like they just don't at Kentucky. Like that's just not the way they're built. They have plenty of talent, but like he finds ways to win because he puts guys in the right position, right? Like he understands, hey, I've got Brock Vandergriff at quarterback. Like I need to ground and pound and play defense and put like there's not more talent on Kentucky's defense than ours. There's not even close to as much talent on Kentucky's defense
yeah,
as
but
there.
you're talking about a Stoops defense is hard to
It
beat.
is, but he puts his guys
He's
in
a
the right
beast. Yeah.
position. They
Right,
play
play, yeah,
hard. They're tough, and they hold Ole Miss to like two scores. Like
yeah,
that is
yeah.
like what would Ole Miss do on our defense? Is kind of the way I look at it. And
Yeah.
so
I miss when he was there too. I mean, he brought in a lot of those guys, and Jeremy Pruitt, continued it, and it was just a fertile field, of
yeah,
NFL talent. And you're right; these guys were put in the right position, and these coaches are in the SEC, and they're coaching and playing against these big teams, these monster teams, and they're they're showing up and they're making them a competitive game. So,
So I want to
I
get your
mean,
take on this because I haven't really talked to a lot of
yeah,
people
man.
on it. But since you're on here, I want to get your take. So I went on a rant the other day. I don't know if you were here or not, but I went on a rant the other day that I don't want us to bring Sod back from Duke. And so just because you called in and you're on here, I want to talk to you about it. What do you think about that?
Bring what?
I don't want Duke to be a Sod game.
Ah,
Like I'm not a
oh
big I'm not a
man,
big fan of that. I
no,
understand
no,
like it's
I'm
Sod
not.
for rival or I don't like it.
No, well, we need to challenge the team. I don't want it to be a sod game. Go out there and beat them like you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
You're 22-0 against them. That's Duke. Give me a break. It's not basketball. You know what I mean? No, it's
Yeah.
not a sod game. Don't bring their cheap little grass over here.
Yeah.
We don't need to bury it. Don't waste that on that.
Yeah.
Go bring me one from Miami in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Challenge them on that.
Yeah. If you beat
That
Miami,
yes.
then you can go back up to Duke and grab that sod too. You can get a 2-for-1 special.
Yeah, there you go. Then you can go back, sneak somebody in there, and take that sod.
Sneak Red
Yeah,
Lightning in to go grab some
yeah.
sod if you beat
And
Miami.
then we'll do a special, a 2024 season with both Miami and Duke together,
Yeah.
married together. But
One of the
but
best
no,
ACC rivalries of all time.
I agree with you. Don't go over there and do the sod thing anymore until beat a real team. You're 22-0 against them. That's not going to be a huge game. It's not
People say
supposed to
like
be.
people's argument was like, well, tradition, and I get tradition. Like that's fine. Like I would,
Yeah.
like if you play Duke this week, like Osceola's still going to plant the spear and stuff, right? Like if you were at home, so like I get tradition, but like what about the tradition of actually like not losing to Duke? What about the tradition of actually playing hard? What about the tradition of not ever being an underdog to Duke? Like what about those traditions? Like those mean more to me than the stupid cemetery does.
Man, 22-0, man.
Yeah.
22-0. I mean, we've owned them. We've told them, hey, make the check payable to Seminole because we own you. Seriously, it's true. We have done that, but no, don't put Duke in the sod field. It means nothing. Go to Miami and bring that sod, and I challenge that team to do that.
Yeah.
Go do that. You want a place in that sod cemetery of the 2024 season. Go to Miami and bring me sod. But Duke, you can have that. You're supposed to beat them. You're supposed to go over there and beat them. So, we'll see, man. I don't know. We'll see.
Tony, I appreciate you. Have fun on Friday night.
Awesome, brother. Definitely,
Appreciate you
definitely.
for calling in,
Always
bud.
a pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Definitely. I'll see you around, man. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah. I mean, you got to, at the end of the day, though, you got to go win this game. Like, if you don't win this one, it does kind of feel like 2-10 to me. I think you beat Charleston Southern, right? I mean, I guess weird things happen. What I am interested to see is how Brock plays and really the team plays against an opponent like Duke. Not that they have the, what'd you call it? Like the room for error to take any opponent lightly, which maybe they realize that, maybe they know that, and it won't be an issue. But like, I do think a night game in Doak against a top 10 team in Clemson, playing in front of a sold out ish, right? Like obviously with the renovations, I do think it's easy to get up for that. Like, I think that's an easy game to be like, oh man, we're going to get after it. And I think they did. I think they played hard. Were they great? No, obviously not. They didn't play especially well. Like Brock did give the spark and they played well at times. But wide receivers weren't good. Offensive line wasn't good. Defense, okay. I think it's easy to get up for Clemson. Is it as easy to go play in Wallace Wade Stadium, a boring stadium where you're probably not even going to have a very good road crowd? Like, I don't know how much, maybe Duke will show up, but like, can you get up for that? Because I think if they play with the same intensity they played against Clemson, I do think they'll go in and win because I think they're that much better. If they focus, don't have massive errors, don't have massive turnovers, I think they'll go in and win. What I do wonder about with Brock specifically is I think there's a pro and a con of the way that this has happened with Brock. I think one of the pros is that Brock got in with really no film on him, right? Orange Bowl, maybe you could pull some film from that if you're Clemson. Maybe a little bit against Louisville. I mean, he threw the ball like 12 times against Louisville. Like, I don't even know if that counts. But now he's throwing the ball 40 times against Clemson. And I think Manny's a really good defensive coach. I know it's still Duke, but I do think Manny's a good defensive coach. And so like how the con is now that adjustment time has like, he's not going to have that, like, I don't want to call it beginner's luck, but just kind of that beginner's advantage of like, nobody's seen you before. Remember like Jeremy Lin going off like for like 40 for 1 billion games in a row. And then basically once, I think it was like 10 games in a row, but then like film got on him and he just kind of like faded back into anonymity because people could understand like, oh, well, here's his tendencies. Here's what he does. I'm hoping that one game was not enough of a sample set for Duke to be able to adjust to the things that Brock likes to do. I don't think Clemson expected Brock to throw the ball 40 plus times. I don't think Clemson came out and expected us to take deep shots down the field with Brock as often as we did. And so is Duke able to adjust to that? Is Duke able to play that a little more soundly than Clemson did? That's a concern for me. Like, I don't know that Brock is going to look as good in week 2. Now, the other pro, you've now had 2 weeks for Brock to get more comfortable, for Brock to learn more, for Brock to be a little bit more confident in what he's doing because of the bye. So I do think that there's pros and cons to both of it. And to me, that's the most interesting thing. I don't, if our offensive line plays what they're capable of playing, like, we'll be fine. If the defensive line plays like what they're capable of playing, I mean, it is still Duke. The wide receivers should be able to get off a little bit on their DBs. I don't really worry about that. I like the young tight ends. I like a lot of things about this team and this youth movement. But I do kind of wonder, like, what does Brock look like the next time out? Because you only really get that magic, that spark of the new quarterback, the change, the excitement, the playing for him and all that stuff. That only lasts so long, right? And then fundamentals just take over. It just ends up being like, hey, are you going to make the play or are you not going to make the play? And so I'm not saying that that's all gone. I'm not saying that I think like, oh man, well, that only lasts for 60 minutes and that was against Clemson and then you move on. I'm not necessarily saying that, but eventually that spark is going to run out. Like, could he go on a 7-game streak where that spark doesn't run out? I guess. Like, he could have that for the rest of the year. But I don't think that lasts forever. Eventually, it just comes down to, are you going to make the better plays? Is your coach going to put you in position to succeed better than the other coaches are? And so I kind of wonder about that. I also, looking forward, how much does the Miami, we'll see what we look like on Friday and then what Miami looks like at Louisville on Saturday. Miami hasn't played especially well the last 2 weeks that they've played against Virginia Tech and Louisville. But if you go out and you lose to Duke, what is your confidence level like? And let's say Miami, they're a 3.5, 4-point favorite against Louisville. If Miami goes in and beats Louisville by 2 touchdowns and you lose on the road to Duke, like, what's your confidence level going into that game? It can't be very good. And I'm, from the fans' perspective, it'll be 0. But if you're a Miami player or a Florida State player, like, you, at that point, if Miami was to lose to Louisville or beat them by 1 on a, the refs give them the game again or whatever, in Florida State, then I think you got a little confidence going down there. If you lose to Duke and Miami beats Louisville by a couple scores, does anybody even feel like watching that game at that point? Like, do we really have to do a preview for that game at that point? So I do think the way you look this year is probably kind of dictates the way you end up coming out and playing for the rest of the year. So I'm very interested to see that. I do want to get you guys' take on this. I asked Richie this the other day. And so if anybody wants to call in and talk about it, I'm good with it. We'll probably go for about 5-ish more minutes. We've been on for a little over 30, probably got about 5 more minutes in us. But I would like to know if Florida State goes 4-2 down the stretch, they're going to finish the year at 5-7. Most likely that 4-2 would be wins against the Carolina schools, a win against Charleston Southern, and then a win against Florida. I do think the Miami and Notre Dame games are going to be extremely tough. We'll see, but I don't have a lot of confidence there. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. If we were to go 4-2 down the stretch and not get blown out by Miami or Notre Dame, say you lose those by like 10, 14, whatever, would you feel better about the way the season ended? Now, you certainly wouldn't feel better about the season in totality, but I feel like you'd feel like kind of like you did at the end of 2021. Okay, there's some hope here. We put the young guys in. They played a little bit better. We feel like we have something to build on for next year. Obviously, Florida State's going to have to go out and hit in the portal. They're going to have to develop better over this offseason. They're going to have to get better coaches in to coach these guys and put them in better positions. So going 4-2 down the stretch doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, well, all our problems are fixed and we're good to go. But I do feel like that's kind of the path to like not want to drink bleach. Am I allowed to say that on YouTube without getting canceled? Like that, if you go 1-5 down the stretch, I think you just kind of want to burn the program down. If you can win a few of these games, if you can go, I mean, even 3-3 would feel a little bit better, I suppose. But if you lose to Florida, like with who knows who the coach is even going to be in that game. If that happens, I think you're feeling pretty bad. But I think if you were to go 4-2, you'd feel a little bit better. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy on that. Obviously, if you go 5-1, if you upset one of those two teams and you make it to a bowl, listen, I think certainly wouldn't be happy with how the season went like in totality. But if you could somehow find a way to make a bowl, which I'm not predicting, I don't think they do that. But if you somehow found a way to make a bowl and you finish this year with a winning record because you win a bowl game, which I think they would. If they go 5-1 down the stretch, I think they'll win their bowl game and they'll finish over 500. Not predicting that at all. But if they were to do that, like, you'd have to feel a little bit better about the future. Like, hey, Mike got through to these guys. They actually buy in. They actually believe. They actually care about being Florida State Seminoles or whatever they care about. I think you'd have to feel a little bit better. Maybe I'm crazy about that. Maybe that's way too lofty of a standard and we just need to focus on beating Duke. But it is like midway through the year. It is kind of a good time to kind of evaluate where you're at. I think if you could find a way to get some wins down the stretch, you'd feel a little bit better here. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Double Fries, No Slaw, the morning show brought to you by Decadent, a coffee and dessert bar. Again, Warner Robins, Georgia, probably the location that's maybe closest to you guys. If you're anywhere near there in Georgia, make sure you go check them out. Oh, our caller Tony was just on from D.C. I don't know how close Fulton, Maryland is to D.C. About an hour. That's with bad traffic. So, Tony, I need you to get up there to Fulton and go check out my friends at Decadent Coffee. So, I guess we do have people all over, not just Florida and Georgia folks. So, let's go through some comments. I mean, sure, I'd feel better, but I'd rather go 1-5. The next 5, that one win being Miami, honestly. Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Harlan, what would you do? You could just text me or jump in or whatever. If you, would you rather beat Miami and lose out or win out and lose to Miami? I think beating Miami would be pretty special this year. Like that would be kind of icing on the cake of being pretty excited. And yeah, I'll just go ahead and take that. I'll take beating Miami. Hunter, find me 4 wins. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm searching. I'm trying. I mean, it comes down to Florida. It comes down to Florida to me. I think you could beat Florida if Billy Napier is still the coach. If they fire him before the game and somebody else is in there, I think they're going to beat us. If Billy Napier is still the coach, I think you could find a way. I think you could absolutely find a way to beat Florida. I mean, held Clemson to 29 points. I think you could hold Florida to 20-ish and find a way to win. I don't think that's a guarantee, but I think it's possible. Yeah, beating Miami, though, not projecting it. Miami is beatable. The problem is, I think, what do you think Miami's issues are right now? Like, why do they look worse these last 2 weeks? Is it because they're finally playing better competition in Virginia Tech and Cal? I don't know that either one of those are like really great competition. My take on Miami is that they play down to their competition, which is pretty common, right? When you're a great team, sometimes you play down a little bit. You don't play it like Florida State against Pitt last year, Florida State against BC last year. I think that's pretty common for teams. You're disinterested. You're playing on the West Coast. It's Cal. It's weird. Whatever. Virginia Tech Friday night. My worry with Miami, they won't play down against us. They will be locked in. They will be focused. And if we give them the opportunity, they will do to us what they did to Florida. That's my worry about Miami. Like, you know, in a rivalry game, you're not going to play down. You're not going to like overlook somebody. You could overlook Cal when you have to travel to the West Coast, right? Let's just be fair. You could overlook Virginia Tech, who was bad at that point. We didn't know how good Vandy was, but they had lost to Vandy. They had lost another game. You could kind of overlook those teams. I don't think Miami would overlook us. And that's my worry with that game is like the path to beating Miami is you have to play pretty well and they probably have to have a little bit of an off game, which could certainly happen, but I don't think it's going to be because they're not focused or they're not prepared or they're not ready to beat you. So that's kind of what worries me about Miami. But I have time to worry about that next week. Like let me get off of the Miami thing because I don't want to depress myself thinking about that. Let's just try and beat a team in Durham, North Carolina this weekend. All right, Friday night, we will certainly be talking about this game more. We will preview it tomorrow night, Wednesday night, so make sure you're here for that. 9:25, I have to get rolling. I have something. That's why we started a little bit earlier today, but we still went for about 40 minutes. Listen, quick show today. Actually, it wasn't that quick. I guess we went for 40 minutes, but I appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in. letting me rant a little bit, talking through this a little bit. We'll do this every Tuesday morning. Thanks to Decadent and their support. Let's just go get this win on Friday. I'm a broken person right now. And I'll be even more broken if we go 1-6 with a loss on the road to Duke. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in, always for hanging out. We'll talk to you soon. Go Noles.